Hey, you guys, my name is Aisha Malone. I am a 10-year teacher. I have been teaching fifth grade for 1 year, but the rest of my history is in third grade. Right now, I am an ELA teacher, and I'm super excited because I'm also the owner and co founder of Rose Café. So, Rose Cafe is a reading cafe that I'm trying to bring to the Roseland community, the 60628 community. One of the models of Rose Cafe is books, coffee, and community. I'm really big on community because we are only as strong as our community. And it made me think about, like, before we even talk about the book, how it ended up being a lot about the community and how it is very big to who you are. So Rose Cafe is very big to who I am because I want to promote some healthy conversations, which is what we're going to do today. Have a healthy conversation, show it to the young people, and let that be a guide to what we want to see. So that is where what Rose Cafe would do. I know Rebecca want to talk about some things that Rose Cafe has done and what we're planning to do soon.
Oh, my bad.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I am the co-founder and creative director at Rose Cafe, and I'm a former educator. I taught everything from first grade, third grade, and then K through 4 special ed, and now I'm in school setting education policy. And like Aisha said, our slogan is Books, Coffee, Community. And one way that we've been promoting community during these weird times is through book talks like this. We've hosted author talks and book clubs, and we've also collected a lot of donated books and given them back to the Roseland community. Have given out close to 6,000 books to the Roseland community since last year, something that we're really, really proud of. We want to continue promoting literacy and how much it can transform a community. So Tashay, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure thing. Hey, everybody, I'm Tashay, native Chicagoan, hobby bookstagrammer. I'm also a former educator, so I'm happy to have that connection as well. I taught high school biology in DC and New York, but I now work in tech. I'm a career changer, so I now work in tech. But native Chicagoan, happy to be here with you all, happy to meet you all, and happy to chat with the homie, Mateo.
What up? Should I say a few words?
Of course, Mateo, tell everyone about you.
Everyone, nice to meet you. If I already know you, I see some familiar people I know up in here. Welcome. Nice to see you again. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I wrote the book Black Buck, which is behind me that we're going to be discussing today. As Aisha mentioned, community is at the center of this book, and it's also important and an important, necessary aspect of my own life. I believe that, regardless of who you are, that success, however you define it, doesn't mean all that much if you don't help other people achieve the same. So I think that we'll get into some of that today. A little bit of background, Aisha hit me up and I was like, yeah, I'll talk to you. She hit me up again. I was like, yeah, I'll get to you. And then, she was just, I don't know if everyone from Chicago is like that, but she was persistent. So we connected and I was like, okay, books, coffee, community, uplifting other people. That's exactly in line with my life and the book. So then I got to meet Rebecca, saw that, they're joined forces. And then Tashay was the first person who came to mind. Tashay and I met. She was an early supporter of Black Buck. And I'm saying early in terms of like Bookstagram and non-family and close friends knowing about the book. She peeped it from, I don't know, a couple months before it came out, showed love. I really appreciate it. I never forgot it. We got a chance to have a conversation in the past. So when Aisha and Rebecca were talking about something to do with Chicago, I was like, I don't know, Vic Mensa or Chance the Rapper and Kanye sort of done right now. So let me hit up Tashay. That's how we're all here today.
I'm glad to be mentioned in the same sentence with those folks.
I don't know any of those dudes. If I
Well,
did,
you say you know us. You don't know Chance, but you know Aisha and Rebecca and Tashay. So
Word.
So Rebecca, do you want to talk a little bit about how this forum will go today?
Yeah, so we had a few specific questions for Mateo. Just curious about questions about your process of writing the book and specific questions about the book. And then we had some more general questions for all four of us to just discuss. So we'll make sure we mention that before each question.
Okay, Mateo, let's get into Black Buck.
Let's do it.
And I love it. Let me just start there.
Thanks.
But obviously I'm a teacher, so I annotate. So
Okay.
I wanted to start with when we first met you through Instagram, we watched, and then so we read the book,
Hmm.
and we saw some similarities. Just how you look.
Hmm.
Some things we learned about your parents and things like that. And I wanted to know how close in connection is Darren and Mateo.
It's usually question number one or sometimes question number two. Darren and I, we have certain similarities, but we're two different people. He works in sales eventually, and I did as well. Right. He's from Bed-Stuy, born and bred. I'm not originally. I'm originally from Long Island, but I lived in Bed-Stuy for different years. And I lived down the street from where the book takes place, actually, when I was on my own come up in the world of startups. The startup is set in the same exact building that I worked in, but it's different than the company I worked at. And whenever anyone brings up questions like that regarding the company, I say, listen, there's a disclaimer in the front of the book. So that's all I got to say there. Our entryway into sales was different though. I was working at a startup as an intern. I wasn't getting paid, and I was assisting with community management and social media. And then from there, a couple months later, I became the community manager. And like 6 months after that, the CEO asked me to start the sales team with him. So when the book begins, the company, someone, is already this rapid growth organization, and Darren is now invited to join, where in my life I was actually building it. So there's a few similarities, but also many differences. It was important for me when writing Black Buck to not just write my life, to not write the blow by blow of my own history, because I felt as if I did that, I wouldn't have the necessary distance to write the book the way that it needed to be written.
Another just general question about the book. I wanted to ask you about the title, Black Buck, and how you came to that, because in the book you mentioned that Buck refers to his nickname for Starbucks. We also know that Black Buck is a slur.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know how you came to that.
Yeah, definitely. I see Theodore. Is that my man Theo in the car? Theo.
Yeah.
What up, Janae? Is that you in there too? There's people from IG in here, and it's just I want to show love to the folks who support whenever they can in different ways. It means so much to me. But yeah, Rebecca, great question. I always welcome this question. Because depending on who you are, right, there's a lot of people, especially of a certain age group, younger folk, that have no idea, what the historical connotation of Black Buck is. And then there's older folk, especially Black folk, that might be like, Black Buck, what's this book, Black Buck, about? So for me, it wasn't the original title, but Darren was renamed Buck always in every iteration of the book, and he eventually embraced that new name. But for me, it came down to a few things. As you said, he used to work at Starbucks. His name's Darren, then it becomes Buck, and he's Black. There's the concept of Black wealth and financial freedom and financial liberation and independence, not being the only path, of course, to liberation for any people, but one path that I think is important for folks to focus on. And then there's a historical connotation. For those who don't know, the Black Buck, was the enslaved male who the white enslavers believed was unruly, untamable, was going to burn down the plantation, steal the women, steal the animals, and bounce. Now, Buck, Darren, who becomes Buck, is not burning down these workplaces, but he is burning down what they symbolize. So picking it as a title is a form of reclamation, but more so just because, very simply, it matches the energy of the book. It matches the energy of what Darren, later on, Buck, is doing.
I love that. So my question is a little bit about self-motivation and mentorship. So in the book, the first encounter with Red, Darren has.
Oh yeah.
Darren's feeling like this is his day. And so I just want you to talk a little bit about like who made that day happen more so. Was it the man who saw something in someone else, or was it when you see something in yourself? Because sometimes people could say like, oh, but it could have been either one who made that day happen. And I just want you to talk a little bit about that for me.
Damn, I've never been asked this one. That's dope. See, I'm tempted right now to flip it on you. I'd
It.
like, I'd like,
I want to
I'd
hear.
like to get, I'd like to get your, I want to get your opinion after I say, because I don't want people to think that I'm gonna like base whatever I say off you. But basically, I'm not sure. That's like what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
I'm not sure. I think that I was about to use a cliche. I'm still going to use it. It takes two to tango, right? So look, Tashay is like, come on. It takes two to tango. I've never done the tango in my life. I've danced at times, but you know what I'm saying? Like okay. When I was working at startups, people used to say, or a couple people on the sales floor used to say that the definition of luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So Buck presented an opportunity perhaps to himself, or maybe Rhett was the opportunity, but he was prepared. Or maybe he wasn't prepared, but what we see in the book, which is actually truly like, if I could, and I tried not to insert my authorial self too much. Like, it's hard for me to speak on behalf of these characters because they feel so real. Michaela, what up? But the way that I perceived it is that it just came down to a moment where sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Like you get a bolt of courage and you go spit to that person that you think, you know, is attractive or you like, or you say that thing and stand up for someone, even though in the past you've been shook. That's what happened to Darren at that point when he meets Rhett. He's like, yo, let me just try to spit to this guy and see what happens. And Rhett was sold. And then he got his gears, you know, turning and said, let me either try to use this guy, you know, to help my organization, or I see something in him that I saw in myself, and let me, you know, try to activate that. This is all to say, I'm really not sure. It comes down to both of them. And before I ask you, you know, what I like to highlight when it comes down to the opportunity, that moment between Darren and Rhett, is that I do not believe the same thing would have happened if Darren were Jason, right? Highlighting the nature of opportunity, highlighting the
Clyde
palpable,
for that
whatever.
moment, or Clyde for that moment, right? You know, so that's why I was asking, was, you know, as a mentor, I've coached basketball,
Yeah.
you know, and I've had girls who's like, no, I ain't playing. I don't want to play. You know, it's like, yes, you are. And
Yeah.
you're going to feel today.
Yeah.
And they have a good game.
Yeah.
But they're playing.
Yeah, I mean, mentorship is a focal point of Darren's journey. But when I'm bringing up Jason, I'm raising the question of proximity to whiteness, right? And how, for better or for worse, people who are closer to whiteness are afforded these opportunities. Darren went to Bronx Science, one of the top public high schools in the nation. He knows how to code switch. He knows how to talk the talk. We see Jason. Jason's keeping a gutter 24/7, right? He's sort of like that Michael B. Jordan character in, you know, Killmonger in Black Panther to a certain extent. But let me ask you, you know, I like to ask everyone on the panel, what do you think in that moment? Did it come down to Darren or Rhett?
I answered, so I think he's talking to Tashay and Rebecca because personally, I think it was Rhett. I think he was the one who made it happen. You know, you got to see something in people and you got to push them to a point of, now let's do it. Because if Rhett wouldn't have said nothing, because he could have drank the coffee and walked off like, okay, good coffee. But it takes somebody to pull something out of somebody to make this like world change. We gotta like give them the opportunities.
Yep.
I think
Real
it was
quick.
definitely a
No, go ahead.
synergy. Like I think it was a perfect, you know, a perfect storm kind of situation. Like Darren goes hard with selling or like knowing what kind of coffee you like and like really like going in and making like he's exhibiting his signs of being a salesman like from the jump. And so Rhett would have no impetus to like offer him a job if he wasn't already like going hard and proving that he could do this thing. So like Darren is like low-key narcissistic in the beginning anyway. And so he's like feeling himself like, duh, I do this coffee thing in my sleep. And so he's flexing in that moment. And then Rhett is like, oh shit, okay, cool. Like, and I think it was just like the perfect storm. But Rhett wouldn't have just walked into Starbucks and been like, here's this cool black guy. I'm going to offer him a really cool job. Like if he were just like, oh, sir, can I take your order? What would you like today? So I think it was, a meeting of the two.
I agree, but I do think like when Darren pushed that out, he could have been like offended or been like, no, I know what coffee I want. Like, why are you telling me what to drink? Or like, okay, thanks. And then just walked off. But he did see, like Tashay, he saw that sales aspect of him, and he pulled that out and he followed up on it. Like, even when he didn't want to go, he didn't want to like follow up on that, Rhett followed up with him. But we also, Aisha and I were talking about this earlier today, like maybe Rhett, and this is kind of like out of there, but maybe Rhett also was observing Darren the way Darren was observing Rhett. Like up until that point, Darren was saying like, oh, I saw this guy come in every day. He ordered the same thing and he noticed things in him. Maybe the opposite was true too. So it wasn't right that moment, wasn't the first time that he noticed something in Darren.
That's wow.
That's a good call out.
I've never heard that. That's so interesting. What we say in sales is that people buy based off of emotion and justify based off of reason, right? So what you were bringing up earlier, Aisha, just a few minutes ago, in terms of Darren inciting those feelings in Rhett, and then where you were saying, Rebecca, about he sold him, he did it. Tashay, you were saying the same thing. Like Darren sold him, he triggered an emotion in Rhett, which made him chase Darren, which made this powerful dude then start chasing this young kid, who works at Starbucks, who society would say, okay, whatever, he's just, in the service industry, whatever, he doesn't amount to much.
So then moving forward in the book, so he gets the job, right? And this kind of a toxic work environment, to put it lightly. It's like I was explaining the book to my mom and I was like, it's kind of like Wolf of Wall Street mixed with, I was picturing them planning Firefest, remember that? Like, that's how I pictured this work environment. It's very like toxic, high energy. So this is based off of that work environment. How do you think, and this is a question to anybody, how do you have a work-life balance? And life could mean, like your mental health, doing things outside of work, like leisure, having fun with your friends or family. But like, how do you find that balance?
I think she might be talking to the author first.
She said anyone. Yeah, I mean, work-life balance, you gotta brush up against the limit of it to know what it is, right? I think that in this nation, we're a nation of workaholics to a certain extent. Not everyone, of course, right? But if you are in these corporate environments, then you sort of measure your worth based on how much you work and for how long. People will say, "Whew, I pulled a 15-hour day," like it's a badge of honor. Where, Black Book is coming out in the UK later this month, and homies in the UK are taking holidays every couple weeks, or like every like month or two, you'll just get an out of office and they're like, yo, I'm gone for 2 weeks. And you're like, weren't you just gone for 2 weeks? Where I don't know, at least I know in the world of startups, in the world of corporate, you are enticed by something like a limited vacation. But then once you get in there, no one ever wants you to take it. They want you to work, and not be an individual, but an employee, a center of productivity. So work-life balance, I think it's difficult. I think it depends on who you are and what industry you're in, and also how much self-awareness you have, right? If you are truly aware that you are more than the work that you do, then I think that you would value yourself more than how much money you make or the title you have or the influence you have at people in the office or wherever you work. And then you'd want to be kind to yourself and care for yourself, and, eat good food if you can, or, go home a bit earlier, spend time with your family and friends if possible. But that also, I think we need to remember, is a privilege, because not everyone has that ability. Like in terms of me, I'm first generation American. I don't come from the type of folks where it was like, yeah, I was just really going to follow my passion, son. And that's why I did this, that, and the other. And they're like, nah, I got to get bread, so yeah, those are my thoughts. What does everyone else think?
for me with work life balance, it was weird in association with the book because he had a balance at first. You know, he was cool with Starbucks and going home with his family. It wasn't until, you know, it was a toxic situation where it I was wondering, like, is this something he wanted to do? Like when they poured paint on him and things like that, when like it became not a balance, but do I even want to be here? I wasn't when I was reading it, I didn't think about a work life balance. I was just thinking about how much was he given to a job that was turning him different. So I'm still thinking about that response. What you think, Tashay?
I think Mateo definitely hit on a lot of the things that I would have said about like how you maintain work-life balance. Like I think when I was an educator, that was the bottom of the barrel of like work-life balance that I ever had. And I never wanted to experience that again. So like literally you work an 8 hour, 10 hour day within a school. And then at night you're calling parents, you're grading papers, you're lesson planning, you're doing that on the weekend. Like it was just like this nonstop thing. And so now working in tech, I have like very clear boundaries. Um, I do have unlimited vacation. Like my family is my top priority. And I just make sure that I am always respectful of that. And I understand like it is important for me to make that clear to my teammates and like the environments that I'm in. That is not the case everywhere. And so I think it's like you could have your hard lines around how you maintain work life balance, but if the environment that you're in does not support that, it can get tricky. So like there, I don't think there's like a one size fits all. Like I have what works for me, but if I go work for the wrong tech company, like that could be out the window, you know? So yeah. Um, but it's funny that you brought that up because I definitely also had a question about this. Like Darren was far from like my favorite person in the whole wide world, but I couldn't help but like empathize with him in so many ways. And like I was like, uh, on the like in the vein of self-care, right? Like therapy. I'm a huge proponent of therapy. And I was like, Darren, after going through working at someone, would probably need to go to therapy. And like, what are some of the things that you feel like he would be working through with a therapist? Like, if we're talking work-life balance, if we're talking, you know, mental health, all of that. Like Mateo, you live inside of Darren's brain. Like,
Mhm.
what are some of the things that he would be talking to his therapist about?
Oh, damn. Well, trauma, right? He could spend a year or a couple. I don't know. I never done therapy. I mean, when I was 14, I went to a psychologist once, and that was that. I was like, no, I'm good, but I support other people going if it works. Um, Probably a lot of trauma. Um, Probably the absence of his father, right? Because it is in a way intrinsic to this whole story because his mother was mom and dad for so long and held him down forever. And then there comes a time when he feeds into, it could be toxic masculinity, it could be something else, feelings of inadequacy of I got to man up, I got to man up, you know, I got to do this now. I see my boy Jason doing it for his mom in this way. I got to do it in my way, given this opportunity that I have now. Um, he would be discussing, you know, why he was hurt by people, you know, why he was subjected to certain things in the workplace. And then he went and hurt the people who loved him unconditionally. I think we would need to unpack that a little bit, why he did it. Um, there's just so many things. Was it all worth it? That's the question at the end of the book. Was it worth it? The thing is, without giving any spoilers, um, my thought in terms of how the book ended and how it's a few years removed from when majority of the book takes place is that Darren has had the time to process a lot of this. Now, I suppose you can only process so much on your own, you know, without the help of other people. But that's something that I wanted the reader to take away at the end, that like he's grown. Maybe he needs to, I mean, we all need to, you know, grow more and evolve and what have you, but he's had the time, despite his circumstances, to really think over that year, because it was just about a year when all that crazy stuff went down, and you know, figuring out how to move forward. Yeah.
Okay, so just to piggyback off what you were saying, and as far as like when you unpack things that Darren was struggling with, he was right, but then he also had this mom. So my question was, Garrett, I wanted to know how important was it to have a mom like Darren had for him to be successful, right? So I'm a mom, I'm a single mom. I have two small little chocolate boys, right? And then I am super motivating for my kids. I'm there for them. And Darren did a lot when he kept saying, this for my mama, this for my mama, right? How important was it for the mom to have the characteristics that she had for Darren to be successful? And what we define as success, I guess, in this book.
That's a great question. It's hard to say because Darren could have been as successful, if not more, and maybe even more grounded if he had a different type of mother too.
Really?
Like Ma was cool, right? She wasn't too hard on him, but she was firm when she needed to be. But I definitely, Ma shared certain characteristics with my own mother, even though my Ma isn't my mom, but they do have similar characteristics in terms of just how, loving, kind, and at times funny they could be. But I also know homies who had really, really, really strict moms, and strict parents that didn't let them out the house, that were barking at them all the time. And, some of those folks are successful too. So it's hard for me to say. I don't know if you can ever predict. I'm not a parent, right? I have parents. I'm on that end, but I don't know if it's easy for anyone to predict how a child's going to turn out, because there's the nurturing, just speaking from my experience now on the end of being a son, there's the nurturing that goes on in the house. And then there's the nurturing that goes on outside of the house that my parents couldn't control, so there's so many forces at play. But in terms of the question, how important was it for him to have a mother like that with those personality traits for him being successful in the way that he was? Um, if someone put a gun to my head, I'd have to say it was instrumental. She was encouraging. But more important than that, and Darren brings this up in the beginning of the book, he says that she was the type of mother that could look at him or look at anyone and convey that she expected more of them without even having to say it. My mom had high expectations of me as well. And she never even really had to say it all that often, but I felt it. So I think part of my own life is in the pursuit of making her proud, so I'm not sure, what do you think? Right? Like you're a mom. What do you hope for your two sons?
Right. So, Rebecca has probably seen me in my parent mode. I'm real in my kids' face. Education is so important to me. I live in a neighborhood where it is not, though, but I'm one of the people in the neighborhood where it's not, that I do feel like it's important. And I know we could get lost in our neighborhood sometimes. And I think I speak to them in a way that I'm scared. Right. So as I was reading, I'm like, oh, she's so sweet. Oh, she is just so nice. And me, I'm like, it's time to go to school. It's time to go to college. I need you to tell Starbucks they got about 2 weeks because we enrolling you already. It's already done, right? So I'm that parent. But she was like, when you're ready, son. And it still worked though. Yeah. And so it made me think about it, maybe you could just chill a little bit. But then I'm like, nah, you can't chill at all. So I wanted to just to know, when it comes to raising these kids by ourselves, was that something you were thinking about? Were you intentional about making her this super, soft-spoken woman, hardworking woman, still nonetheless what he got from his mom, even if she wasn't super egregious when it came to what she was saying, she still got up and went to work every day and things like that. So I was just wondering, were you intentional with giving her those characteristics?
Yeah, very intentional. I mean, that's so with a certain extent when it comes to the characters and how they are, there was how I wanted them to be and then just how they revealed themselves to me.
Okay.
And as I worked through drafts, I got to know these characters better to where I said at the beginning, it really felt like they were real people. If I got out the way as the writer, they were going to tell me who and how they were. And when I got to know Ma better, as well as her relationship with Darren, it was that, you know, I'm your mom, but I'm your friend type thing as well. That's just the vibes that I was getting from them. And that's the vibes that I thought that she would be putting out. Yeah, but we know nothing. For example, we know a little bit actually about Jason's mother. You know, we know Soraya's mom dipped. With all of these people that we're meeting, I wanted them to a certain extent to be unconventional in some ways, right? Like Mr. Aziz, he's from Yemen, but you know, his daughter is dating this guy and he doesn't really recognize Darren as her boyfriend, but he knows what it is. Like he's out there, you know, every day and he knows what it is, but he's not coming down on them as people would think a stereotypical immigrant Muslim pops would be with his daughter. Soraya is drinking champagne with Darren. You know, this, that, and the other. Jason loves chess and comic books. With all of these characters, I wanted them to feel familiar, but also a little bit different and very individualistic.
Switching gears just a little bit, we have a few quotes. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to talk about, I don't have a specific question, but I wanted to just bring up this quote to discuss. If you could read it, Mateo.
Yeah. I began to pity Rhett then. He was so smart and saw so much, yet he was still a prisoner to his limited worldview. But it wasn't my problem. What do you think about that, Tashay?
Now I get put in the hot seat.
I know, I'm just put on the spot.
Hold on, let me turn to page 319.
Oh, you got that arc though. She got that advantage.
Come on now. You know, I'm true to this. I'm true to this. Come on now. I got the arc. I got a finished copy. Come on, man. I'm ready. I'm ready. Come on, man. All right, here we go. Because I'm a visual learner, so I need these words in front of me. What do I think of this? I mean, this is a textbook, like you don't know what you don't know, right? Like Rhett is this worldly man. He's experienced life. He's, you know, running a successful business. He's probably well-traveled, all that good stuff. But he can only see as far as what he's experienced. And so he's never experienced Darren, or he's never experienced the world in which Darren comes from or whatever. Like he probably has no Black friends. He probably, you know, like he lives this very cut and dry, narrow, like white man life. But it's not my problem. Like, it's not my problem to teach you these things. Like, you have to expand your mind and know that there are things that you don't know, and you need to go out and like expose yourself to those things. It's not my problem. Like, it's not on me to teach you to be more exposed. That's what I take from the book.
That's what I was thinking too, in terms of Darren at that point being like, yo, Rhett is a smart guy, but he doesn't know everything. And maybe he's not that smart, right? Like, there's different types of intelligence, as we know. And yeah, Darren at that point didn't want to assume the burden of educating this guy or being beholden to Rhett's perception of him, even though he still has love for him. This is a question that I remember from people from my publisher, not even my editor, just other people at HMH who had read the book that were like, yo, why after everything does Darren still have love for this guy, Rhett? Is it like Stockholm syndrome, right? Where you have love for your abuser or something like that? And I was like, I think it comes down to the fact that what you were saying, Aisha, this guy was his mentor. He gave him this opportunity. He believed in him. He saw something in him, and it's hard to shake that no matter what happens to a certain extent. I don't know. I mean, you might disagree. That's just the way that I was thinking. And that's also how I sort of felt in my own life, you know, in regards to someone who gave me a shot, you know, and helped me get to where I was, at least in that world of startups, until I dipped. But yeah.
Just really quickly. Oh, sorry. Aisha, you're gonna laugh at me, but it makes me think of my favorite quotes. Not in a good way, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that, you know, homophobia is gonna go away way before racism, because everybody, you know, you might have someone in your family that is gay or queer or lesbian, you know, and you love them and you begin to understand what that means. Well, we're so segregated that you may never come in contact with someone of a different race. And that's what made me think of Rhett. Like he happened to run into him at Starbucks, but he has no experience with people that are different from himself. Because look at the office environment. Darren was the only person of color in the whole place.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made me think of that. But when we said it's not my problem, it's like, you're right, Darren, it's not your problem. But then I'm like, whose problem is it? I was like, probably mine. Like that's probably my role. So if something I've been trying to work on, like with using white privilege to use what I have learned, my experiences to explain things like to Rhett. Someone like
Yet, right? Rhett might not have Black friends, this, that, and the other, but he is hip enough that he knew Chris Rock was from Bed-Stuy. They play rap music in the workplace, even though they were playing it before Darren was there. You know what I'm saying?
Made the Tupac, what was the
Cole, Lauryn Hill, the Tribe Called Qualified.
That's what happens when it's only white people.
It's just commentary on it's the type of people who will watch basketball and then call LeBron the N-word. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that commentary on consuming Black culture, but not loving Black people to a certain extent. But Aisha, my bad, you were gonna say something.
I don't know what I was about to say. I get lost so quick.
The Tupac.
No, I was actually about to say I had a quote, but I didn't know if we were done with that. Because I wanted to talk about some oneers. I wanted to talk about the company name. And I think it's the other one. It's on 120. Yeah.
This one?
Did I do the
someone is when he was saying
132?
Like, there we go.
You want me to read it?
I would love to read this one.
It's an adult show.
We all was reading this. So that's right, he said. That is fucking right. And we did it because people believe in us. Because each and every one of you, beautiful, brave, and ballsy people, he said, aggressively grabbing fists full of testicles. All of you are the definition of some oneers. And Mateo, I didn't get the whole thing of the name of the business until I read that line. Like, oh, you are someone, you're somebody. And then so I'm like, wait a minute, did Mateo do that on purpose? Because everything that Darren, he lived to be someone.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the wordplay on that, right? Yeah. It's really a big wordplay. And again, I'm just, I teach English, so I just want to know how intentional were you making that wordplay? Like, because when you read the sentence without thinking of it as a corporate sales place, you think of it as a place that you want to go. You want to be somebody. You want to be a part of something.
Yeah. So, it's funny because this company, Someone, was one that I thought about building a long time ago. And then I was like, nah, I'm good. But then when I became a writer, I said, actually, let me still build this company, but on the page. And let me see, what it would get into. But the name originally came about just because of what you're saying, that when you're talking about it, it's a word that we use all the time. Someone's here, someone's about to go do this, that, and the other. It just sounds so familiar that I wanted the organization to feel familiar. And I wanted them to assume the responsibility of helping people feel like someone, right? So I'm not going to say in every sentence was I looking to do that play, but I remember specifically there's Rhett and Darren in the back of an Uber coming back from Rise and Shine America. And there's the Uber driver saying, oh, are you guys somebody? Because they think that he's famous coming out the building. And Rhett's like, this guy's definitely someone. I was looking to play on the company and him being someone in that instance for sure. I can remember that. But yeah, that it comes down to psychology to a certain extent of what the company is doing with its employees and the image that it's looking to put forth into the world. It's also just a play on many of these startups and organizations that claim to be changing the world when they're really not. You know, they're like, oh, we're making a better toaster. We're changing the world. You're not curing cancer, buddy. But being in these spaces and being around these organizations, not all of them are like this, but I've been around many of them where you're selling the Kool-Aid and it got to taste good. I remember being in interviews when I was one of these people pushing it. When I was a director, I managed 30 people and I had to interview people all the time. I had to get these 30 people. That's bigger than a soccer team. That's like a football team of 20 somethings to do what I needed them to do day in, day out. And they claw their way to the end of the month. Some of them hit their number, some of them don't. All the numbers are on the whiteboard in the sales floor for 90 people to look at. And then all the other people in the company to walk by. And then say it's a Thursday, I say, bet, time to do it all again tomorrow. A new month is starting. You see, so there's like psychological warfare at play where I would interview people and I would say, listen, especially if I liked them and I wanted them to work there, but I wanted to keep it a buck, I'd say, to work here, you not only need to drink the Kool-Aid, but it got to taste good. Because if not, this could be the worst time of your life. And some people did join and then ended up, you know, dipping when they caught a ball to the face in like a ball fight. I didn't even include that in the book. That's something I'm getting too much. I try not to venture into like the real life, but you could see that there's certain inspirations. Tashay's like, what? My workplace isn't like that. But yeah.
You know, but it's never far away. Like tech companies are never far away from that reality. That's all I'll say.
That's a good transition to talk about. I was wondering if you could all talk about just experiences in like being the only person of color in an environment that is all white.
So that's when we were talking, I'm like, okay, because I haven't had many. You know, I went to all black school. I all my life until I went to college, and then I had class with I was the only black girl in class, and you know, they was only thing I just felt was they always thought I was inferior. It was, and they was blatant with it. You could do the thesis paper. I mean, you could do the reference, and I always bring that up because I'm like, reference. I don't do the reference. You doing the reference. I'm going to start with the thesis. That's why I meant to say that. But, and at that moment, it never intimidated me. It was like, oh, okay, we got something to show some people. And I ran with that. And that's how I've been my whole life. With any encounter, I'm going to be bigger than what's in front of me. And I don't think it's a color thing for me anymore, even though I had that one experience. I have not had many.
Tashay?
I should add some context. Like the reason that I asked this question is kind of like Mateo, what you're saying earlier about this idea of proximity to whiteness. Like amongst my friends and family, after being a teacher in a almost entirely black school, when I was the only white person, and not to compare that to say it's the same thing, but I think that so many people of color have that experience being the only person in the room just because of this idea of like closeness to whiteness in the idea of success when the opposite might not always happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, it's hard to quantify how many people of color, more specifically black people, find themselves in these scenarios. I'd say at least, right, and this is a generalization that I feel somewhat comfortable making. I'd say at least in the majority of our lives, we have these experiences at least once, if not, you know, a few times, regardless of if you are like Aisha saying, you know, growing up around predominantly, you know, black people and going to black schools. But I think that it also, in terms of how you grew up and the amount of non-black people someone was around, you know, being a black person, that it can affect your reaction to this book, I'll say, because there are some people who grew up just around black people and they're reading this book and they're like, what? I would have caught a body, right? If this guy Clyde did this, that, and the other. And then there's other people. And of course, the buckets don't fall cleanly. Like, of course, it mixes, right? Depending in people's backgrounds, their reactions. But there's other people who say, and they might not say publicly, but they sent emails or DMs like, yo, this is me. I grew up around white people and I've swallowed my tongue so many times because I realized that in order to survive, I had to be silent, or if I were to say something, it would be me versus 20 people or even 10 people who would gaslight me and make me think that I'm bugging out, or like what's happening is just a joke, or it's not actually happening. In terms of my personal experience, right, I grew up in a place that was somewhat diverse, but after a certain age, because I played like soccer and because of the classes that I was in, I was around like majority white people. So I'm no stranger to Darren's experiences. And while I didn't experience overt racism in the workplace, of course, there's going to be microaggressions in a lot of these types of environments, right? Which is just a fancy word for passive racism. A lot of my experience comes from outside of the workplace that I intentionally translated into Darren's experience to show people who have ever experienced these things that you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not overly sensitive. You're not bugging out. Like, this is real. And those are the people that I initially had in mind. For anyone else, non-Black or especially white, that read the book and they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. Cool. Now you do, get on it, go do your work. But this book was by no means intended to be a tour guide into Blackness, or to say, here's my hand, grab it and I will show you what it's like through all these, horrifying experiences. The last thing I'm going to say, because, maybe Tashay has I definitely know Tashay has thoughts on this. Maybe she wants to articulate them. The last thing I'll say is, like, this wasn't 400 pages of tragedy and trauma or doom and gloom either, right? This is a funny book on purpose, because I think that it would have been inauthentic to Darren's life and also the experience of being Black in America, because it's not like every day you're like, damn, sucks to be me. There's so much laughter, so much love, so much triumph, where, you know what I'm saying? I had to include that in the book. Yeah.
I'll say, I think one of my first experiences of being like the only or one of very few is at the first tech company I ever worked at. At the time, I think there was only maybe one or two other Black people. And we used to have these common spaces. And one day I was sitting on the couch in this common space. And when you work in an open concept, there are very few conference rooms and things, and they run out quickly, all that jazz. And so I was sitting on this couch working or whatever, getting away from my desk. And this group of people came. It may have been about 6 to 8 people. And because they couldn't get a conference room, they came and had a meeting around me sitting on this couch. And when I tell you, like, I like, when I was figuring out what was happening, maybe later that evening or something, I went home and I told my wife about what happened. And I literally just bawled. Like, I was just like, this is wild. Like, and so what that was about for me is, like, at the first tech company I ever worked at, like I said, when I started, it was only one other Black person. We were maybe 150 staffed. There was only one other Black person, a Black man. And by the time I left that company, I was the only Black person that worked there. And I always felt invisible. And so what I was crying about was like, yo, these people really just like set up shop and had this whole meeting while I was sitting here working, never announced themselves, never said like, hey, is it cool if we set up, like, if we have this meeting here, like, do you mind? Can you move? Like, whatever. And they just like, it was business as usual. And I was just like, yo, I am really invisible to y'all. And so by the time I left that company, I sat off in a corner by myself, and like, you could operate in this company across 2 floors all day long and never see a Black person, because I was the only one. And I sat in a corner, like, intentionally, because I, at that point, didn't want to be involved with anything that was happening. And also, I think it just gave people an excuse not to see me, even though they already didn't. And so, yeah, that was like really, really hard for me, existing in that space. Like, you work at a company of 200 people and like, you are the only person who looks like you. And like, we had a couple conversations, me and some of my white colleagues that were like trying to learn their way around the world. And I was like, yo, tell me the last time you've been to a place and you were the only white person. Like, that's probably never happened to you in your entire life, and probably never will. Like, you will never go somewhere you are the only white person, period. Like, you will never work anywhere that you are the only white person. It will not happen. Mm-hmm. Like, it will not happen. And like, when you frame it that way, people are like, damn, you're right. Like, and I have to learn to operate in these spaces all day, every day. I have to learn how to live in your world. You never have to learn to live in my world if you don't want to, like, ever. And like, that's the part that I think was like mind boggling for white people, but that really like did a number on me to exist in a space and just be like completely invisible. Like, you can't even offend me because you don't even see me. Like, you can't even, like you can't even be overtly racist because I don't even register to you, which is like 10 times worse, probably. But
Wow.
yeah, that was one of my first experiences being the only. There have been a couple others, like in grad school, I was we are a class of 88. I was the only Black woman. We had a Black guy, but he was from Africa. And so he had a very different experience of the world and living in the US. Like, so we just didn't, we never like related in that way. But yeah, there have been a few.
I mean, the word that first came to my mind when you were saying that was invisible. I've had numerous, and it's like I gotta hold back because I want to say some more about invisibility, but in due time. But invisibility was the word on my mind, and thank you for sharing that too, because it was just like so real. Um, and I think it helps me and maybe some other people know, like, okay, I've had these instances of invisibility as well, but now I'm hearing another, and while it sucks, it is comforting to know that you're not alone. So I appreciate that. Something you said makes me think about one of the being semi-vague, one of the earlier interviews I had regarding Black Buck. It was like, I don't know when, it was early in 2020, and I was talking to this white guy, and this is nothing like crazy. I'm just bringing it up because this is what reminds me. We were talking, and towards the end of the conversation, she's like, yeah, Mateo, I have no idea what it's like to be you, but at the same time, you have no idea what it's like to be me. And I was like, word. And then when I got off the phone, I was like, actually, I have way more of an idea what it's like to be you than what you, because I've been living in your world, playing by your rules. I've been taught that you are the standard of everything, homie. Yeah, I know what it's like to be you, man. And if I don't, then I won't be far off. So anyway, like what you're talking about, Tashay, of white people never being the only one is pretty wild. And the last thing I'm going to say is it makes me think about when I was working at a startup. I was a director. I went from intern, whatever, to sales guy to manager to director. When I was interviewing people, I remember walking in and a lot of these people being like, what? I got to be interviewed. Like, when's the real interview going to start? I'd interview them and like, okay, this is what it is. Then I might hire someone. And then there would be in the first month, the first couple of weeks, me asking them to do something or me recommending. I wasn't the type of person that was like, yo, just do this, right? That's not gonna fly. I don't like that. And then I would get their faces and these expressions where I'm like, they'd hesitate or they would be reluctant. And I'd be like, yo, they have never had to listen to not just a person of color, but a Black person in a leadership position in their life. They've never. They'd probably be like, Mom, oh my God, I can't believe it. The audacity of this Black guy telling me that I need to pick up the phone and that I should say, hello, this is X. He's like telling me. That's what it felt like. It was just, I don't know. Wow, there's levels to this. We could go all day about this.
We could go all day, all day.
All day, you guys. And I was looking like, this is great. I'm really enjoying this conversation. Oh, I want to respect everybody in town. I want to talk about so much. I want to talk about Rose Cafe. I was like into the book, but it was one quote, and I don't know. That I want to bring up about mentorship. Rebecca, if you could bring up the one with in the dirt, and then I wanted to compare it to. You can read this. I'll give you this because.
Thank you. Life, boy, you're feeling life. And can nothing grow without fertile soil or the right hands for it? This right here, he said, touching a dusty finger to my temple, is soil, just like this garden. And only you can decide what grows and who you allow to get their hands in it. Understand? That was Mr. Rawlings.
Dude, that was
A real
everything
one.
for me. A real one, right? And then I'm like, their mama said in her letter, when I thought about hands on top of hands, like you being the mentorship, I want to make sure that I wrap that before we leave, you talk about mentorship on like from the book point, I know we mentioned it earlier, but
Mm-hmm.
that quote right there is everything. I'm gonna take it to my classroom and we're gonna chop that up. But I want you to talk about like why is it necessary for you it to be hand on hand for things to grow? Like
Yeah.
what are you saying in that moment?
None of us can do it alone, right? We all need guidance. The esteemed Toni Morrison said that if you're free, it's your job, to free someone else. If you have power, it's your job to empower someone else. And I take that to heart, and that's also running through the veins of this book. I'm not going to say that every person that achieves success is obligated to help other people, because I don't know. I don't know their own backgrounds. I had someone read an early draft of Black Buck and say, why, after everything, doesn't Jason just become like a Jay-Z character and help, and uplift his community and this, that, and the other? And I said, listen, sometimes when people make it out of certain scenarios, they just want to take care of themselves and their own, and they don't have the psychological or emotional capacity to put on for an entire community, right? And I don't think that it is fair to assume that they should, but those who can, I believe, should. um, Again, I said this in the beginning, success doesn't mean all that much if you can't help others achieve it, right? What at the end of your life doesn't matter if you've made some bread and got some titles and did this, that, and the other. We're here. This is the way that I believe. This is what I live for. Like, we're here for other people, and service is the highest purpose. And it doesn't mean not to get yours and live a good life for yourself and those around you, but I found life to be just so much more fulfilling if you help other people. And even if you do have an ego, even for someone who is super self-centered, be self-centered about impact, a positive impact, and helping other people. So that's a little bit about where it comes from, hand over hand. Some of us need different types of guidance. Some of us do need someone to hold our hands and say, this is how you do it. Now go do it. You got to let go of their hand, let them fall, let them stumble, be there to pick them back up, or say, your legs are strong enough. You can get up on your own, but I'm still here. For me, mentorship was critical, at least in my world of sales. I didn't have a mentor when it came to writing. I wanted one. I was reaching out to people, trying to be like, yo, I'm a young Black writer. I'm not trying to get put on, but I just want to talk about this, that, and the other. And 9 out of 10 times, no one got back to me. No one wanted to meet and whatever. And I think that it might have made me a stronger writer and more resourceful, because I got it on my own to a certain extent. But now that I do have a community, the Rhode Island Writers Colony, this community of Black and brown writers, this is my family. These are the people I know I can always turn to. I think that it's more meaningful to me now because I didn't have someone holding my hand. So those are my thoughts. What do you think?
I agree. 100%. I agree 100%. I think this was for the viewers. Like when we show this to young people, because we record all of our segments. This is I need.
Oh man, you got me on here cursing, and you gonna show this to the young
I
folks?
have older students. Like so, but I think they need to hear you say that. I think they need to hear a Black man say that. I need them to hear the passion from you. We do it all day. Sometimes it's different when a man say it, a Black man say it.
Right.
And if they're not listening to me or somebody else, I need them to listen to you.
No, that's real. That's real. I mean, we all, different things hit at different points. Thinking now, yeah, because I wasn't thinking about the students as well, but thinking about students and mentorship, if I could just give a couple points of advice now that I know that you're showing a video to them, it is make yourself vulnerable. Shoot your shot. We always joke when we say shoot our shot because someone thinks that it means sliding in someone's DMs, but it's more so being the master of your own destiny and taking a risk, good risks, healthy risks, not bugging out or mixing this, that, and the other and saying, oh, how's this going to feel, right? As some people do in high school. I see Rebecca laughing. She knows what I'm talking about. But more so writing an email to someone who you respect, going on LinkedIn, looking up someone in your city. It's simple as doing a search as, you know, depending on where you are, type in Chicago, director of engineering at this company, or brand manager at this company, shoe designer, and connecting with them on LinkedIn and sending them a note in that connection request. Don't just connect out of nowhere, you know, shooting your shot. But I think what's most important is betting on yourself and knowing that other people can teach you things and help you along the way. But honestly, to a certain extent, you have all that you need within you already. That's my piece to the kids, to the young ones, not kids, to the young adults, the young scholars, the future, the present.
Just going off that to wrap up real quick, to be respectful of everyone's time, I wanted to ask you, I'll pull up another quote. We're big on quotes.
I could tell this is cool. I've been to many events, but none with these quotes. Oh, from JC himself.
Right. She was like, who said that? I was like, Jesus Christ. She thought I was joking. I was like, no, it was.
Oh yeah.
But thinking of this quote, like, was it worth it?
I'm not going to answer that. That's for the reader, right? The lines in this book are intentionally blurred, putting the responsibility on the reader to decide what's what, right? What is real? What is satirical? What is actually absurd? Because much of what we know to be reality, other people are reading this book and saying this is absurd. Things like this would never happen to anyone, or this, that, and the other. So when it comes down to that last question of, was this all worth it? That's on the reader.
So when you say that, Mateo, and I wasn't supposed to say anything, but when you say that it's on the reader, okay, take that out. When you talk about like what he endured when he first went to someone, and you're saying, just for the sake of my mental, how you said, like, remember earlier you were saying like somebody would have responded to this, like, yeah, they would have called a bot. They would know where they would have let Clyde. What were you trying? Because anybody who read this, I could look at it a different way. Someone else could look at it a different way.
Yep. Is
this because there could be something that's discouraging, and it also could be motivating. Like, was it necessary for like him to endure all of this and continue to go? Like, were you trying to say something to, you know, Black people who don't endure? Like, when we say, nah, we're not gonna do it. Like, are you saying like, what, do endure and then you'll get to be successful? Because that's a lot to endure. You know, and that can make a person who is strong like, you know what, I'm gonna just do it. Because you look at Darren, he endured all this and he was successful, but at the end of the day he lost a lot.
Yeah, he sacrificed a lot. Wow, that's a real ass question. I am so grateful for it. There's what's happening in the book, and then also what I'm saying through that. So what's happening is that we see Darren, as you're saying, adopting this attitude of man up, or I'm going to take it until I make it. What we're seeing in the book is that mind state is the it that he's taking becomes so lost that he becomes lost. He doesn't know who he is anymore. The people who loved him unconditionally, the people he came up with, his neighborhood, his mother, his girlfriend, his best friend, these people don't recognize him anymore. He had to sacrifice the best parts of who he was in order to succeed at someone. Now, there will be many people who will say, that's not worth it. I don't want to do that. You shouldn't. There will be other people who say, I think I can. That's riskier. That's risky because it's easy to get lost, especially if you're one of the few in these environments where all of a sudden you're making a lot of money, this, that, and the other. Yeah. So it's not on me to say what someone should or shouldn't do, but I wanted to show the consequences of following down this specific path. But what I will say is that Darren did not need to change who he was and lose the best parts of himself in order to succeed. However, Darren did need to change who he was and sacrifice the best parts of himself in order to succeed at someone, at this specific type of workplace. But then you have to ask yourself, do I even want to be in a place like this when there are buku other places that will celebrate who I am and allow me to be myself and thrive?
When you say that, like, about having the impact on other people, like, it just makes me think that he had to go through what he went through to have the impact that he did on his community. Like, would he have had that same impact if he stayed at Starbucks?
He had such a big impact at Starbucks, right? Like, and sometimes it's not as big as the community. It's the Starbucks. It's the four people in them four doors, right? Like if he, I don't. Yeah, this book.
I mean, this is what I'll say. Rebecca, that's a great question. We don't know what would have happened to Darren if he stayed Darren. However, my thoughts, and again, this is the cool thing because there are certain things that I don't know. So I feel like a reader, just like you, even though I wrote this thing, it's weird. But my thoughts are that Darren had to become Buck in order to start the Happy Campers and do what needed to be done. There have been people who write me and say, why didn't he go back to being Darren when he was, finding himself again? And I think that he stayed Buck because Buck was the one who, was necessary in order to start the Happy Campers and do what needed to be done.
I have one really quick question. It's a quick one. Speaking of the Happy Campers, I was curious why, because I've been noticing your hat, why the fist with the phone wasn't on the cover instead of the hand with the coffee.
Yeah, I was just like design things. I mean, I designed this myself and I had one of my boys actually draw it. These book covers, all this, I mean, they got mad people in the room and, deciding like what's actually going to sell, what's going to be attractive. I almost hesitated. I didn't like this cover at first. They had showed me a different cover. I wonder if I can ever release the first cover they showed me. And I was like, nah. And then they showed me this. And I said, what in the Lil Bill is this? Like, it just seemed like some kitty, like colors. I was like, nah. And then they said, okay, we're going to send you a dummy book. And for those who don't know, a dummy book is basically like another book, a hardcover that will have the same dimensions as the book that's going to be published. And they'll like print out this cover and put it on it just so I can see it and feel it in my hands. And I said, this is going to be some psychological type thing where I hold this in my hands and I'm like, okay, I like it all of a sudden. I said, no, don't send it to me. They said, it's already on the way. So they sent it and I looked at it. I was like, this isn't as bad as I thought. And then I set it up in my apartment and I looked, a few feet away and I said, okay, I think this would be recognizable from like a storefront. It pops. It's it's memorable if you've seen it once. And then after some back and forth, I was like, listen, I am not the type of person to tell people to do their jobs. I've never sold books before. I've never designed books before. My artistic sensibilities might be different from you. So this is where trust is going to come in. And fortunately, it's worked out because I'm not going to say everyone loves the cover, but what I've seen overwhelmingly, people are feeling it and it's eye catching. So yeah, that's how the cover came about. But for me and the logo, I was going to do this anyway. I was going to come out with a hat, t-shirts and whatever anyway, to inject my own flavor in the promotional process. And now we got this and we got a cover and we got some other stuff.
I love it. I bought the book because of the cover. So
she judged a book by its cover.
She was like, I'm like, I don't know. I like the cover. And I didn't even know I didn't even know we were gonna interview you. I didn't know it was gonna be big. And it just like I just bought it because the cover was sweet.
Right. Tashay knew.
Look, see, that's why we need to link. Hey. And I wanted to, before we leave, I just wanted to remind the people who are watching us about Rose Café. We are trying to promote Black authors, Black stories, things that like uplift the community. That's why we were so intrigued by you, Mateo. And the word around the street is that we are doing really good with that. So the way this works, we want to highlight authors. We want people to buy the book from us. You get your sales out. We get people to notice what we're doing in the community. And then we also have a march coming up. We're doing that in the community, roads and community. So Tashay, this is something if you could, write down on your calendar, support us with it. We just want to promote like the life that's around here. As the community is about to become a medical district. We want to make sure that before any of that happens, they see who is already over here. And this is just to promote that. And then Rebecca, you could want to tell them about like, our donations and stuff and how they can donate to us for books.
Yeah, so if anyone's listening on here from Chicago, we do come drive around anywhere, pick up book donations. Like I mentioned earlier, we have book drives in Roseland. So if you have any books just sitting on your shelf that you think somebody else might enjoy, we'll definitely come pick that up. You can reach out to us at any of these on here, Instagram or website. Um, and yeah, we would really appreciate people just checking out our Instagram and sharing our stuff. That's one way to support if you can't buy the books from us.
Definitely. And it was great talking to you guys. Tashay, we will really be talking soon. Mateo, we are family now. So,
Yes.
any endeavors that you have that we can support, please let us know. We will continue to share your book. Your next book we'll share. And we just want to make sure we keep this community going and keep growing as a culture, because this was really dope.
Definitely. Thank all of you, Aisha, Rebecca, the homie Tashay. I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do, not just for literature, but also for your communities and the dialogues and just what you and Rebecca are doing together. And of course, what Tashay is doing on Instagram, off of Instagram, just in her life. Come on. Appreciate it so much, and much love to all of you. Thank you.
We
Yeah,
really
thanks so
appreciate
much.
you. Like your book's blowing up and everything, but to take the time for our little story, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's not little at all. It's big. It's the impact.
Tashay with us pretty soon. You see how I stalked you? I'm about to stalk Tashay.
Say no more. I'm easy to find. I'm easy to find.
It was a pleasure to meet everyone today.
All right, everyone.
Likewise.
Take
Thanks,
care.
y'all.
Be well. Peace.
All right. Good night.